In July of 2024, a shot missed him by an inch, and he walked back onto the same stage the same week. I'm the analyst laying out the files, and this is not a survey of leadership in the abstract, nor a debate about who was liked. 5 choices, counted down from 5 to 1, each measured against what the other men in the room did with the same moment. Measured on one axis only, why he outmaneuvered the leaders across the table. One decision leaned on how he ran his own people. Another rested in nothing more than how he talked to a crowd. A third on how he handled the men sitting across from him at the table. Different levers, one scoreboard. Stay to the end because the top file is the popular vote no Republican had won in 20 years. We start at number 5. I start where I keep the count, at the bottom of the stack, the personnel reset. Picture a West Wing conference room, a long table stacked with personnel files, and one org chart pinned open in the middle. This is where the 5th decision lives. Not a crowd, not a speech, but a man deciding who stays and who goes. The lever here is management. Where a rival leader guarded his cabinet to look stable, Trump treated the roster as something to move. The Brookings turnover tracker put his first-term A-team churn near 4 and 5, well past any modern administration in the same stretch. To his supporters, that was not chaos at the top. It was a willingness to pull the file of anyone who wasn't performing and set it on the discard pile. That is what put the 5th file on the stack. They shielded their people to shield themselves. He rotated his to keep the seat working. Rotation as a tool, not a symptom. One file down. On my count, next up the stack, the compressed timeline. 10 years against 1 year, that is the contrast this decision turned on. A vaccine timeline that normally runs about a decade, driven down to under a single year. The lever here is tempo. The cautious leader lets the process run its usual course and calls the weight prudence. Trump made the schedule itself the decision. Warp speed cut 10 years to under 12 months 2 ways. It ran the trial phases side by side instead of in line, and it paid to build the factories before any dose was proven. So on the day approval came, the vials already sat on the shelf. That is the file that bought him a year no one else had. They treated the calendar as fixed and managed inside it. He treated the calendar as the risk worth taking, and the timeline that collapsed proved him right. 3rd file I open on the count, the negotiated peace. A diplomatic signing hall, a long table under flags, one formal document laid out under soft ceremonial light. This is where the 3rd decision lives, and it lives in how he cut a deal. The lever here is the one you already know from the table, how he handled the men across from him. The usual practice sends a problem into a multilateral room, many parties waiting on one another until nothing can move. Trump treated it as a set of direct, 2-sided bargains, one country across the table at a time. Each deal closed on its own terms. Across 2020, his team signed 4 states in turn, the Emirates and Bahrain in the fall, then Sudan and Morocco, each on its own price, not one shared deal. That is, the file with 4 signatures in it, not one. They sent the question to the room and waited for consensus. He took each side in turn and closed. The deal closed bilaterally, not the deadlock managed multilaterally. 2nd on my count, near the top of the stack, the line that held. Picture an outdoor rally stage in rural Pennsylvania at dusk. Empty risers, a bare podium still lit after the crowd is gone. This is the decision that survived a direct physical threat and kept going. The lever here is how a leader handles opponents and pressure. The cautious move reads the danger, steps back, and calls the retreat safety. Trump did the opposite. A shot at that Pennsylvania rally missed him by an inch. The decision was what came next. He skipped the pause and put himself back on the trail inside the week. The pressure did not bend the schedule. The schedule closed back over the pressure and continued. That is the file that put him 2nd on the count. The others read the threat and stepped back. He read it and kept his footing. The schedule did not bend. He walked back onto the same trail the same week, and the rank holds at number 2. The line pressed, and instead of breaking, it held. Last file on my count, the thinnest on the stack, the number no one else had. A plain vote tabulation room under overhead fluorescent light, a wall map of the country shaded county by county, a printed tally sheet laid flat on the table. This is the decision the men across the table still cannot explain, and it comes down to a single figure. In 2024, he won the popular vote outright, the first Republican to carry it since Bush in 2004. He lost in 2020 and won again in 2024, the first since Grover Cleveland to take the seat back across a gap. That is the file that closes the stack. The list ends where it began, on the one axis that held the whole way down, not the office, but the count on the sheet. So there they are on my count. 5 files, closed and stacked in rank order on the same table where we started. Take them from the bottom up. One last pass, nothing new added. 5. The personnel reset, a roster he moved when the others guarded theirs. 4. He built the factories before the science was in, and bought a year no rival on this list could find. 3. 4 Arab states signed with Israel inside 1 year because he worked one table at a time, not the whole room at once. 2. A shot missed him by an inch, and he stood back on that same trail before the week was out. 1. The popular vote no Republican had won in 20 years, and a return to the seat no man had made in over a century. 5 files, 5 kinds of nerve. Read them together, and one habit shows through every page. Each man at that table held one of these files. He held all 5. Of the 5, which one could have gone the other way?